everyone, and welcome to a new episode on the Sarah Ann and Amy channel.
So, for those of you who are new to our channel, I'm Sarah, I'm an actress, and this is my sister Amy, who is a film nerd. And together we take you behind the scenes of different films and shows.
So today we have a very special guest, Mr. Anthony Francisco, who is the former senior visual development artist at Marvel. So did I get that correct?
Yes, you did. You did. No, it's Marvel Studios visual development art. No, it's the same thing. It is. I had so much trouble trying to memorize that on interviews, but we have to be like accurate. So, but yes, you got it right.
You're probably familiar with his work, but we'll go more into detail about that in this interview. He's designed characters such as Baby Groot in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 and Adolescent Groot in Endgame and Infinity War. He's also developed keyframes for very memorable moments, such as the ending of Volume 1, where Groot shields the Guardians. And he also has designed other characters in Marvel films, such as Black Panther, Ant-Man, and much, much more. We are very honored to have you as our special guest today.
Thank you for having me.
Our first question for you is for viewers who may not be familiar with your story and how you got to where you are today. So let's just backtrack a little bit. And could you share a little bit about your journey, personal or career, to becoming the senior visual development artist at Marvel and then to where you are right now?
Well, I started my career as a creature designer in films. Um, and just all I wanted to do were monsters, especially like monsters for horror films. So I started in the special effects side of the industry. What was my first film I worked on? One of the first ones, but one that people probably know is Bubble Boy. Have you heard of Bubble Boy with Jake Gyllenhaal?
Oh no, we haven't. I'm a Jake Gyllenhaal fan,
Yeah,
but
he's in this
no.
bubble. Yeah, you already have, so you should check it out. On the special features, I have some sketches there. I wasn't using Photoshop yet, so that's where I started. And um, movies like Men in Black, 2, Men in Black 2, and Chronicles of Riddick. Um, when I was in games for a little bit, it's a long story, but but it, it, it's a long road of getting better, and then eventually landing my gig at Marvel, which I was just supposed to be there for 3 weeks, but then ended up being there for 9 years. So total, work time. I guess I've been working in this industry as a concept artist for about 23 years. It's pretty long. Yes.
Thank you for sharing about your career journey. It's always fascinating to hear how people get to where they are today and how you started doing the creature design and then ending up here. And I know everything you do along the way helps build that just knowledge and skill set there. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to really learn too, because I was reading, or I guess watching some other interviews as well, and just hearing your story, and it's really inspiring. Just kind of backtrack even before like your career
Yeah.
journey here, because you immigrated to the U.S., right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then
In
what age were you?
92. I think I was 17 already, 17, 18. I still remember that time when leaving all my friends in the Philippines, coming here, and the whole time thinking that I'll never see them again, which I wish my parents were able to verbal. Maybe I was just so like sad that I couldn't listen, that I could just save money and go back and visit them. But it felt like that really, like I could never go back because I'm here now. I do wish I had that mindset where I could just work, save money, and then I could just fly back to Philippines. But it wasn't the case.
Yeah, our parents both immigrated to the US as well, and I know they definitely
Um,
worked really hard to get us to the place that,
yes, yeah.
that they are at and then where we are at now, and definitely motivates us. How do you think that whole experience of just like immigrating to the US and things like that has really impact you and the stories you want to tell or your art? And I know you're working on some short films now that explore your culture, so I'm really curious to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, now it took me a while to realize that what I wanted to do. I think I've always wanted to be a director. Actually, I also wanted to be a fashion designer in the beginning, but uh, usually when you have your family on the Asian side of stuff, having being a guide, being a fashion designer wasn't seen as that's something you should do. So from there, I guess I just still pursued art, maybe illustration, because I love Dungeons and Dragons. Comic books was really inspiration for me to want to be an artist. And it turns out storytelling was one of the most important things for me. And even when designing characters for these movies, I always have to put my mind into like a story mode so that I could um design better with intention, with the short films that now I'm finally deciding to do more short films and talk about the like more Filipino folklore stories, stuff I grew up with, and just stories of from my perspective being a immigrant from the Philippines. And I kind of joined the Navy for a little bit, and uh, there's stories there that I would like to highlight and put out in the world so people that I think could relate to the other stuff I've gone through. When I design stuff for, design costumes for different movies, I try to put myself in the same place and try to feel like I'm in that world. For example, for Black Panther 2 for Namor,
Mm-hmm.
when I was designing him, I was imagining that I lived in that time in the Mayans and I was
Wow.
doing the glyphs, but I was also a graffiti artist during that time. And I was trying to do it my style. So it still had that same feeling of the glyphs, but not being too accurate. So I could just create and not have to um, worry about offending anybody.
Mm, that actually was my kind of next question here, where I guess your creative process, which it seems like putting yourself in the shoes of that character, the costume is part of that. But
Yeah.
also another question kind of in that too is where do you kind of draw inspiration from? So it almost seems like history there too. You're answering
Oh
all my
yeah.
questions before I even get to them. But I guess when you design characters, costumes, and keyframes, like where do you kind of start? Imagine with a lot of Marvels, you probably start in the comics, but then where do you go from there and where else do you draw inspiration from? And I guess another question too that I have is does that process kind of differ between designing characters versus designing costumes? So there's a lot of questions in there, but
Yes, of course. Yeah, character design and costume design are almost the same thing, really. Because with character design, with costume design, you're still building the character that way, and then character design is still putting costume onto the character. I think they're the same thing, but just said differently. But overall, it's still designing a character so you feel. I try to design so that you feel like the character, I guess, when you see them and you want to be that character. Um, and not just taking inspiration from the comic books, but from my own life and from different resources I had been inspired by throughout my whole career. And some of these shapes, like for the Dora Milaje, I've been designing those shapes even before I was at Marvel. Those shapes have been what do you call it? It's like developed on characters for games before and for other films, but it wasn't how do you say this? Wasn't approved. It was just maybe it was too much, too tribal. Um, I used it for my Dark Elves when I was on this project called Project Offset. It's like this game project, first person shooter that never fantasy first person shooter that we didn't get to come out. Um, but when I was doing the Dora Milaje, it all kind of came together, and a lot of my Filipino influence from Filipino tribes like the Igorot was in there, together with African tribes, the Nabili, the Dinka tribe, especially some Maasai, but mostly Dinka because of the corset. That one's very heavily inspired by the Dinka tribe. There's other tribes too, but it's almost like you have to choose one main tribe and then have all the other uh like aesthetic influences kind of support that design. It's a balance from structure to the surface design, right? Because the structure is samurai, like how things are put together, and on top of that, you design the materials and then the patterning and making sure it's not too busy, and how you could group each design aesthetic as one value. A lot of things to balance for sure, but with that one, I kind of had a clear idea of what I wanted it to be.
So I just had a question that I was also wondering. What is your favorite like character, costume, or keyframe that you've designed and why?
There's so many. I think I like them all. So, um, well, I there's something I could talk about that because I always talk about the big iconic keyframes that I've worked on. I don't know if you guys know that I worked on remember the fight of Doctor Strange and Thanos? Uh
Yeah, you're talking about the moon
yeah,
thing.
the moon, like
Yeah,
bringing
yeah,
down the
yeah.
moon. So that was my idea. I got to
Awesome. Yeah.
pitch. It was really fantastic seeing it up on the big screen, and of course they made it look so much better up there. um but to know that I was able to come up with the idea and the note that Ryan Miner then gave me. Ryan Miner is the head of visual development, so he was excited to like give me this note because he knows I like to like really push the boundaries to make it a bit crazy. I'm kind of known as the idea guy. Um, yeah, but with this one, he was like, okay, Anthony, what they want to see is an epic battle between Doctor Strange and Thanos that you've never seen before. It's like, oh, no sweat. It's like, no, but I was excited though, that kind of feeling instead of getting afraid, it was just like, wow, I have room to really push this. But when I started designing it, I was like, oh my God, this is hard. I don't know what to do. So first I started off like they're just punching, but of course that's basic. So okay, how do we do the punching fighting a little more exciting? And then eventually I was like, well, they don't need to punch each other. They could use things to throw at each other, and then they could go to portals. How would Doctor Strange fight Thanos? Would he bring him into his world first? Can he even bring him to this world? Um, but then Thanos is more destructive forces. Maybe that's where things got bigger and bigger. I was just thinking instead of his fist, maybe a rock. Instead of a rock, maybe a nuclear warhead. Instead of nuclear warhead, what gets bigger and bigger? Kind of like the Roadrunner versus Coyote fight where things get bigger and you have a bigger knife or something. And eventually I was thinking, what if you opened a black hole and pulled out a sun from the black hole? And then just like, it just really went crazy. And I love these kind of science stuff. So that's one was one of my favorite things to work on. But there's also smaller keyframes that I like. It's still a great fight, like Ant-Man fighting in the briefcase.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that? So I designed that scene too, and the note I got was one line: briefcase fight. So what's in the briefcase? Oh, they don't know. Just I gotta put it together. So pretty much I became almost like a production designer where I had that phone flying and they're fighting, and the
Mm-hmm.
phone would be my light source because I was trying to think of a light source within the briefcase. It would be so dark. How would you see any of the fighting? And what would be broken when they're in there, and how strong are they? So all these questions you start listing down is very important when designing anything, a character keyframe, to list down the questions that you want to ask yourself that would require the scene to look amazing or make sense. Asking the right questions sometimes is hard, but when you place yourself in that situation, you're Ant-Man. how would you fight Ant-Man, or how would if you were Yellow Jacket, you know.
It's so fascinating kind of hearing your thought process of like you have to write down because you know if you don't think of those questions, the viewers will, and they'll be like, that doesn't make sense. Like, how does this work? So,
Yeah,
but of course, it's in a world of I don't want to say fantasy because Marvel is kind of grounded also in our world, you know, plus an extension of it. So it's like we still have to adhere to some of the rules of the world while also being creative in those ways, like you mentioned with the fights,
yeah.
like
That balance,
ways of battling. Yeah.
yeah, definitely what you said with that balance of making it seem realistic, believable, but fantastic, right? How do you balance that line of believability and totally like, you know, like, this never would work? Because some people's design thoughts kind of get stopped because they don't want to go outside the box, I guess, and because they think it's already it's off limits. But I would say, for someone who wants to do design concept art, you should always go beyond that box, always break it as much as you can, just to practice breaking the mold, you know, so you become a better designer.
Exactly. And I know we've talked a lot about like, I guess how you come up with a design and then when you're designing it, what that process is like, a kind of I guess honing that design. And I'm curious to now learn the steps afterwards. So let's say you finish a design, where does it go after that? I'm sure you work very in tandem with the director, but if it's a costume, probably a costume designer, then I'm assuming probably an animator if it's like a like Groot or something like that. So um I guess like what are the steps after you finish that design? And then does design tend to stay the same throughout those additional steps? Like are they pretty true to what you designed or does it change throughout the process?
It does change usually in the industry. If it changes a lot sometimes, but what's nice about Marvel is it doesn't change as much because we in some projects you're together with a team and the team gets changed often, but with Marvel they have a, you know, the visual development team, or like a full-time staff, a group of artists, of elite artists that get to like work on all the films. So we get to design all the heroes and villains of the MCU,
Mhm.
and that way we could keep the same kind of style, I guess, throughout all the movies. And we pretty much just answer to Kevin Feige and the producers. That's where we're kind of in that realm. Um, so when we start a design or start the development, it would be almost a year in advance sometimes. There wouldn't be a script yet. There wouldn't be any actors yet. So we would just come up um with interesting combinations of, you know, of if we need to do a keyframe, combinations of like action or even like emotional keyframes. But most of the time, our source material will be already available in the comic books. But with my designs, sometimes I, what's awesome is I get to do brand new designs that's not even connected to the comic books, but definitely always inspired by the comic books. And I try to stay true to the source material as much as possible.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So when you, I guess, design characters, and I didn't realize, I guess it comes even before people are cast or even the director comes on. So do you
Yeah.
affect who gets casted then? Like if you design a certain look and feel and then do, you know, the casting agents then go look for someone similar to that? Or I don't know how that whole process works.
Yeah. Sometimes that actually happens. Well, I think I think they would be thinking of the same people to cast, and they would have a list of people you want to try, and but they allow us, the team, to have that discussion with them. So like on Black Panther, I didn't know who was gonna get cast. I just put Denai Guerrera as one of the paintings for my Koya design. So I painted her face because I said I want her. She is perfect for, you know, Okoye. and I don't know the story behind it if I had anything to do with it. But it would be nice to know if I did. But yeah, she was the first person I thought, and then I found out that they casted um uh, Lupita Nyong'o for the younger Dora Milaje, which I didn't even know her. It was Nakia. Like I didn't know that yet at that time. Now that we're talking about it, I'm trying to remember how it all went down because I was like trying to design costumes for the casino scene, but we didn't know what the casino scene exactly what was happening yet. Are they undercover? Are they, so it's almost like this, like I don't know. I just know I have to design the characters, but they're in the casino scene. But can I put them in the Serengeti, like in Africa? Like how does that look like? So sometimes I put them in different environments because sometimes I need uh, to put them in an environment to kind of see the whole picture sometimes. Um, and I would be, I decided early on that when I was designing for the casino scene, I pretended I was a fashion designer and I was doing a collection, you know. So if you've seen my older designs, my designs that wasn't picked up, they were all kind of have had a certain theme, and then some of them was closer to Black Panther, influenced by Black Panther costume, and then some of them were more like African pulled from African tribes, but still with a hint of more like military or sci-fi kind of feel for the type of armor, but still having that um tribal aesthetic. And then adding some Filipino, culture in there, samurai. I love researching, I love learning more about history. And I really got really deep into that when I was designing the Dora Milaje.
I'm sure it's a cool feeling seeing your work live on in different ways even after you finish working on them. What is that feeling like when you see your work on a screen or people cosplaying or creating fan art of your work?
Wow, that is the greatest feeling. I think I never expect that to have happened. I do this work because I love it myself. I'm a Marvel fan through and through. Since I was 5, I've been drawing Marvel characters, and I would cosplay Wolverine right when I was younger. Spider-Man, they didn't call it cosplay back then. They just called me a nerd. Just kidding. No, I'm like that's no, uh, comic book geek. But yeah, those words when I was younger wasn't. I was Spider-Man. That's what I love to dress up as. Wolverine came about when I was in high school, I think, because he's 5'3", I'm 5'3", and it's just really fun um to see people like cosplaying my designs and Baby Groot especially. Who would have expected that to be so huge? I don't think Marvel even expected that.
Well, he's adorable. That's actually my next question because he's one of our favorite characters, especially the baby version. He's just adorable. We have him right here, so we could have him here for this part of the interview. So we actually got introduced to you and just your work just by watching a reel where you were talking about the story about how Groot, in a sense, is Asian because the design is based off of your son and you guys are Filipino. So just curious if you could share a little bit more on this channel too about that story, how you came and designed Baby Groot specifically. And if I remember correctly, like even the type of like wood that you chose is very specific to represent your culture. So really cool just learning a little bit behind the scenes. So wanted to share that here as well.
Yeah, for sure. I Sometimes you don't realize how your culture really it is my inspiration every time I design something. Because when I was younger, I was like this balita tree, and there's spiritualism tied to it, and Filipino folklore and fairies and all that stuff inside the balita tree. So that has always been like in my mind when I design stuff. And for this one, it's perfectly, it fit perfectly because it's a tree character, and it's it how do you say this? It's really cute. So then I had to use my son body type for it. But in the beginning, James actually wanted, when he said he wanted baby Groot to be like more toddler type. So I was trying to put him in a diaper, and then he would be walking around kind of weird, right? I was thinking, he can't move the right way when you have him in a diaper. So I think I realized that my son's body type proportions when he was 3 resembled that of baby Groot in my mind. And when I was able to design it based on his body type, it just flowed like better. And even his eyes, even the shape of his face. And as he grew up, I also was using him for reference for tween Groot, teen Groot, and now swole Groot. It's his face is kind of like the same shape as swole Groot. I should do a side by side one of these days.
You should just make a reel. That is really cool. That was one of our questions too, I guess, if you were involved in the designs of Groot for Volume 3. And it's awesome because we became friends with the on-set Groot. I don't know if you've had a chance to meet him, Austin Freeman. And so he,
No,
yeah, like the motion capture for Groot. And so just getting to see that behind the scenes and putting together this behind the scenes is just super cool. So good
that's
to see that
so
you designed
cool.
Still Groot as well. Yeah, you guys should meet. I think you would,
Yeah, I would love to meet him.
along with Vin Diesel too.
Yes.
You got to meet Vin Diesel too?
Yeah, he was at the premiere. I think all of us should just get in a room. Well, I guess we don't really belong there. We're just the Groot fans, but you and Austin
No.
and should all get together and have like a Groot reunion or
You could
something.
do the interview. That would be
We'll
fun.
do we'll do a round table with that. And I guess we have to include James Gunn too because he did the motion capture for Groot dancing specifically. So
Yes.
just curious, actually. So was James Gunn kind of aware at the end that Groot was modeled after your son, or is that something where he just saw the design? He was like, "Oh, that's great, that's cute," or did you tell him afterwards? You're like, "Oh, by the way, this is based off of my son."
I he took a picture with my son one time. We were able to get him out there. He's so busy right now. I do wish I could work with him again in the future, one of these days. But I don't know if he knows he was modeled after my son. I think I think he would know now, you know. But James, he's the guy who came up with the idea of Baby Groot. That's it. And then I designed how that idea would look like. So it's really fortunate that in this film that he came to that idea and saying, okay, the big Groot dies, but we have a little Groot. I would love to know how that story came about, Was there a longer version of this, like a long-term plan for Groot in the pot to be the baby, to be because but once you saw the baby, you already knew he was going to grow up. And I feel like when I watch it, it's like I'm watching my little baby from the pot grow up to, young adult Groot. Man, I did design so many versions of him, like from 9 years old to 10 to 11 to 12, and then 16 and then 18. I think he's around 20 now or around that age. And then you saw the very final Groot in the spoiler alert for people at the end tag. Yeah, I designed that too.
Oh, really? The like I don't know what that Groot is.
King
The
Groot.
the monster Groot.
Alpha Groot, yeah.
Oh.
What I'm drawing at work, if they're with me on my shoulders and stuff. So that's what I'm like trying to put myself in that mindset of cute, happy. Um, what a far cry from where I started, where it was all monsters and demons, and then now I'm like it's all cute monsters. Even the obelisk. I designed the obelisk.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Those are so cool.
or
Like breathe rainbows or something. Or what is it? Rainbow
yeah,
fire.
the triple the what do you call it, the road teeth, right, of the monster. And we first saw him swallow Drax in Guardians Volume 2.
That was
Yeah.
the best. Well, I don't want to say best because they're all great, but like one of
Yeah.
the best, like intro, like what's it called? Like first
Opening sequences.
opening
Yeah.
sequence of the
Yeah.
movie.
Oh, I forgot to mention I also designed Taserface. Did you guys know that?
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's one of my
Taserface.
Taserface.
Yes, so I was wondering, how does your son feel on being an influence on the design of Baby Groot? So I see the design of Baby Groot everywhere I go, and I love it so much because Baby Groot is adorable. I'm wondering if your son sees himself in the design. Does he feel excited every time he sees Baby Groot?
Yeah, he does. Well, especially when he was younger, he would say he's Baby Groot, like, but now he's 16 already, so he doesn't quite say that as much. But when people find out, I think they're like really like, wow, and my two kids are in my first short film I ever directed. They're in there. It's about Filipino folklore. Just a cold open to a pilot of a series I'm developing. So now I'm not at Marvel anymore. I've left to pursue a directing and writing development career, and I'm actually creative director now at Dolphin Entertainment. So they're helping like fund some of these ideas I have, and one of it is that short film. So I can't wait to share with you guys maybe soon.
Yeah, we'd love to pass along the information about that. But that was actually one of our last questions here. A fun question for the end, but
Yeah.
just wanted to, yeah, give you the chance to plug any of your projects that you're currently working on, anything else that you wanted to mention for everyone watching to keep an eye out for.
I really want to use the next years to do more short films, maybe do a low budget feature. Maybe Sarah, we could work together in something. One of these days. And yeah, and also get my kids involved because they want to be actors.
Yeah, we have one last like fun question because we heard that you like to dance and Groot also loves to dance as well. So, what is your favorite moment of Groot dancing in any of the Guardians films?
Oh wow, the second one where he was dancing. Oh, that's sorry, because then the end tag for the first Guardians was also pretty funny where he stops. Um, and the third one, I just mentioned all of it.
All
There's
three.
no favorite. And now when I see Groot up on the big screen, it's just, I just see my son, a little Filipino boy running around.
Yeah, that must be so special getting to have it such like tied to your culture and then to your family as well.
I love the movie too. The third one was pretty amazing. How many times did you guys cry? I
Oh,
was like,
Especially, oh my gosh, the scene where Rocket or
spoiler alert.
yeah, spoiler alert.
the scene where Rocket loses Lila is so heartbreaking. This like the scream literally like pierces through my heart. It's just so like sad.
Yeah,
But
yeah, it was. That was
yeah.
so well done. So many moments, even the part where Rocket reaches over to get all the other raccoons. Oh my God.
A lot of her scenes filmed during the middle slash end, so I guess the climax. And
Yeah.
but we didn't know the plot like for the first like half of the movie. I was like, oh, this is all new. And so we were watching, I was like, oh, this is all these pieces that we kind of read in the sides and we put together. But nevertheless, like even though we had an idea of what was going to happen at the end, it still got me for sure. I know the first time
Yeah.
I watched it, I think I was just overwhelmed by being at the premiere, so I wasn't as like emotionally tied to it. But then
Yeah.
the second and third time, definitely cried at the any scenes with the flashbacks with Teves and Floor and Lila, all of
Yeah.
them.
Like you said, you knew what was happening. I knew the story too. Uh, but the way it was executed was really well done. And even at the very end, when he comes to see his grandfather, I didn't think I was gonna get affected by that, but for some reason I did. I was like, wow, I'm also getting older. My kids are getting older. They'll go away and then come back. I mean, that's always what the pattern is. And I saw myself like that. I just hope he doesn't go away that long in space, and come back like my kids. So wow, that was really James Gunn, you're great, great director.
Very talented writer too, just in terms of the overall story was really well written. Now that I
Yeah.
think about it, so did you have any involvement in designing the look of the Star Kids at all, or was that
Star Kids, no, I was mainly designing Baby Groot. Well, not a baby anymore. And when he opens up his chest and with all the guns blazing, I did a
Yeah.
keyframe of that.
Really,
Yeah.
that was such an epic scene. That's
Yeah.
It was awesome.
wow. A
We
lot
even
of
did different versions. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I would say definitely a lot of emotional beats, but then also like really epic ones like that, just like sprinkled in also with like funny moments. It's all just
Yeah.
every other scene, it just like makes you feel a different emotion. For sure.
Yeah. And then it's still pretty, we're allowed to be so creative there. The the parliament, I guess the other producers together with Kevin Feige and Lou Despacito and Victoria Alonso, they have a lot of trust in us to kind of be part of the discussion. They would sometimes change script, like write stuff into the script. For example, for Ant-Man, the first one, with the sugar water feeding it to the ants, right? They didn't have that written. I put that as one of my keyframes, and then they wrote that into the script to give treats like dog treats that way.
Love how collaborative it is for sure. Well, that's
Yeah,
awesome. Well, we've really enjoyed this conversation with you, Anthony. Thank you so much for your time and getting to kind of dive into all the behind the scenes and all the awesome work that you've done for all these films and really impacting the films that we love and enjoy. And can't wait to see all the other projects that you're working on now and getting to watch the
yes.
short films. So definitely please keep us updated on how those go. But just wanted to thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. We'll
Yeah.
do it again. Maybe you could be guest in my
Oh, you'd be
IG
happy
live.
to.
Yeah.
Well, I say we. You probably just want to interview Sarah, but
No, no,
I'll volunteer.
both of you, of course.
But yeah, thank you everyone for watching, and make sure to
Like, subscribe, and comment.
yay! Thank you.